episode of WIP Wednesday. I'm going to give it about a minute or so. Brandon, I think last time some people said that on the YouTube, it kicks in later. So there's probably like a little bit of a lag because we are going live both on my Facebook page, the Crafty Gemini page, and on the Crafty Gemini YouTube channel. So, hey everybody, I can see y'all chiming in the chat box. Thanks, Miss Monique. She says, hit the thumbs up for Vanessa and the crew under the video. Please do if you enjoy these weekly videos. Let us know in the comments, share them with your friends, give us a thumbs up. All that kind of interaction helps boost the video so that even more people can see them. So WIP Wednesday, if you're not familiar with this episode or this weekly kind of live event that I do, WIP is WIP, and it stands for work in progress. So this is kind of like a laid back chat, usually runs anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour-ish. And I'm just working on a demo, working on a project that's in progress or something that I'm starting off new. I kind of walk you through verbally and visually, showing you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then we answer questions live on camera right here. So if you're tuning in, let me know right now where you are watching us from. I'm sure everybody else is freezing because we are in North Central Florida and we have another freeze warning up here. So I've already seen pictures and videos on social media. So many of you up north are like under snow right now. All right. Oh my gosh. Hi, Teresa. She's tuning in from Utah. I know you're probably under snow. Hi, Snip Thread tuning in from Texas. Hey, Barb from San Diego. We got Lisette tuning in from Canada. We got some friends tuning in here from Southern California, Texas, and all over. Awesome. Okay, great. I see you all are watching me on Facebook and on YouTube. Now, if you're watching the recording, anything that we talk about, we always include links in the description box if you're watching us on YouTube, or you can just kind of scroll through the comments and chat on Facebook, okay? Okay, great. We got friends tuning in from Arizona. Alexis, we have more Canadians in the house. Wilma's tuning in from Kentucky. Great. All right, so today we are talking a little bit about using up scrap quilt blocks. And I actually was just starching this fabric right here. Let's go ahead and give them the over-the-shoulder shot so they can kind of see what I'm working on. And we'll do the picture-in-picture bubble so I can still walk you through with my talking what exactly it is that I'm doing. All right, so I just have a piece of fabric. Who remembers this fabric? We brought this out with my first fabric collection, remember? Way back when, years ago. All right, so I'm just starching it because I usually starch my fabrics, prepping it for different things. This little chunk here is actually just going to be the back. I'm working on a quilted hot pad or a trivet, just something that you can put on the table or a countertop when we take out a pot from the oven or something hot that we want to set it on. Now, of course, you definitely want to be mindful of exactly how hot the pot or the rack or whatever it is that you're putting on this. And we'll talk a little bit about battings. I'm going to share with you a couple little sandwiches that I have worked up here. I like my fabric to be nice and dry. So I sprayed this with a little bit of starch and I'm just hitting it with a hot dry iron to just kind of dry up all the starch and set my fabric up. Now, this is going to be my backing fabric. We can get rid of this ironing board for now. I'll set that there. So let me show you what I'm working on or what's going to be the front of the little hot pad here. All right, so this is just a half circle quilt block that I made with my Clammy ruler. And those of you that are probably watching me, if you tune in weekly, you know that right now we are in the middle of our launch and our open cart for my new Clammy Quilt Club. Okay, this is a ruler designed by Latifa Safir of Latifa Safir Studios. Comes in a bunch of different sizes. I used, I believe it was, yeah, let me see. It was the 10-inch Clammy for these half circle blocks. So many of you have already joined my quilt club. So if you're in there, I've been seeing already some of you have finished the first mini quilt, so that's awesome. And if you're interested in joining, remember we have a link in the chat box that you can check it out. But this quilt club is basically 7 weeks. We tackle 5 mini quilt projects and we sew all the curves, okay? So the half circle like that, obviously this has a seam running down the center, so this was 2 of those half circle blocks pieced together to create a full circle, okay? And so these are blocks that I kind of have left over because I have a different plan for the layout of the other blocks that I had made. You can see another one here. And so I decided to turn these instead into like little hot pads, okay? So here I'm using a 100% cotton batting. And this is, I would say, like a mid-loft, right? Depends on the brand and the manufacturer of the cotton batting that you use. But this is a medium weight. This is like a standard run-of-the-mill typical weight or loft of a cotton batting. So I'm just going to put 2. Okay, now on this one, I just used some wool batting. I was going to use wool and then a layer of the cotton batting, but it was kind of fluffy, and I don't have a walking foot for the sewing machine that I'm going to be quilting on it with. So I just decided we'll just leave it with the wool batting, but you can see how much loftier and puffier the wool batting is. Now, I don't like to use polyester battings for anything that's going to serve this purpose of a hot pad, trivet, pot holder, all that stuff. You can use also, I didn't have any on hand. As you can see, these were like scraps. I save all my bits of batting, no matter how narrow they are, okay? You know, when you finish quilting a quilt, you trim it up or you get it back from the long armor, all this stuff, save it. You might not think it's wide enough for a full quilt, but I mean, look at that. This little chunk right here, even 7 inches by 7 inches, is enough to make a little hot pad or trivet. You make a dish, you give it to the host or hostess with, you know, with the little hot pad for the hot dish, whatever it is. They make cute gifts, and they're, again, great scrap busters. I love a good scrap buster. So let me pop in real quick and see if I have any incoming questions before we start moving along on this. Hey, Eurydice. All right, we got some more friends tuning in from all over Vegas, Canada. Cindy says she's freezing in Sarasota, Florida. That's even further south from us. You know, when they start talking about dropping iguanas that are going to be dropping from the trees, that's when you know. I grew up in Miami, so when it gets cold in Miami, I mean, 70 degrees, we're like, bust out the hoodies and get bundled up in a sweatshirt. It actually freezes now in north central Florida where I am, so we do actually get frost all the way up here. Okay, so let's answer a couple of administrative questions. Let's go to my face right quick. Some of you that already signed up for the Clammy Quilt Club and are waiting either on a box or are waiting on your rulers, we are getting them out as soon as possible. If you ordered the ruler by itself, that chances are is going to go out sooner than the full box. Because the big box had so many different components and ingredients in it, we have to wait for all of them to get, you know, to come here again to us so that my team can restock it. But we have a bunch of them ready to go, just waiting on like 2 more items, and we'll try and get those out as soon as we can. The good thing about the videos, right, is that you're not really going to be too far behind. You can always just watch them and catch up, and you get access to all the content. Okay, so we're working on that. If you are interested in signing up for my new online quilt club, Clammy edition, where we're tackling all these curved pieces. This is another example of the orange peel block here, and I'll show you a couple samples in a bit. But if you want to sign up, you have until Friday. So 2 more days. Today's Wednesday. You have until Friday, February 5th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, and then we close the doors and it goes away. So right now it's on sale for $97, down from $137, and then Friday night we close it all up. You won't be able to join again, okay? So if you want to tackle curves and make 5 different mini quilts with us, definitely check it out. So for those of you that are already in the club and you have maybe some off blocks because you're trying the different techniques that I'm showing you in those video lessons, this is going to be a great little project for you to use up fabric scraps, your block scraps, your batting scraps, and all that. Okay, so that piece that I was pressing earlier is this chunk, and I'm going to use it as the backing of this. So I just have my block, and I did use some temporary spray based here. I like to use the Sulky KK2000, and this is just my preferred temporary spray adhesive. A little goes a long way, and you barely need anything with this. So I just make sure you're doing it obviously in a well ventilated space. For something this small, I just give it a quick little spritz, and I smooth it out from the center out always, so you don't get any bubbles inside of your block here. Let's go ahead and give them the other camera shot. All right, so this piece was the backing that I had starched and pressed, and then I was saying this, I did use the Sulky KK2000 is my preferred spray-based. Make sure you're doing this in a well-ventilated area. If you're doing a huge quilt, it's probably not the best method to use for basting your layers. But for something like this, you know, you can just spritz it real quick and then smooth it. I always smooth my projects when I use spray-based on them from the center out. Okay, and this is my favorite one. A lot of people ask, you know, there's some other bottles, different brands, but this one is non-toxic, has no odor, it's clear, and it's ozone friendly, has no CFCs or HCFs. Okay, so this is just the Sulky product I prefer to use. Okay, so I made my quilt sandwich, and as is typical, even with a big regular size quilt, the quilt top is typically the smallest of the 3 sandwich layers. So then I have my batting layers, and remember I did 2. I didn't spray base in between these 2. We're just going to hope and cross our fingers that I'm able to keep the layers together without a walking foot. If you have a walking foot at home, I definitely recommend you do that. You can even baste just the batting layers around on the exterior. You can also go in and baste about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the outer edges of your quilt top here, the little mini quilt. And then the backing fabric, we set it up pretty side facing out, okay? And that is the biggest of all the pieces. And that way I just make sure that I'm gonna catch everything and I can see all 3 steps of my quilt sandwich here, okay? Let me check real quick on my questions, because sometimes I miss things. All right. So Linda's asking, is the Clammy Club on Facebook or YouTube to join? So we have links in the description box below, but it's held on a separate platform. That way we make sure that only registered students get access to the content. So it's not a free club. It's $97 and you get unlimited access to all the videos. There's over 25 different video lessons. And every Monday we're dripping out a new project featuring the Clammy ruler, a different curved block, and then a mini quilt project for you to make, okay? So we have these layers here. And if this was me by myself, not on camera, and talking about this, I would hand baste, which is my preferred method really of basting things together. I don't have the needle and the thread here set up. I do have a free video tutorial on that on my YouTube channel. So if you look up Crafty Gemini quilt basting, it should pop up for you. Karen says her box came yesterday. Tamara says her too. Oh, y'all are enjoying the quilt club. I know, I've seen people already finishing their little mini quilts. I'm like, I love it. But then it also makes some people feel like they're falling behind. So I kind of don't like that part. I'm like, don't feel like you're falling behind. You're okay. You can watch the videos whenever. And I'll mention this. I had some emails, some questions came in about how much time you need to dedicate to the different quilt projects, because I know a lot of people are really busy right now and they're thinking if I join the club, I may not have time to complete it or to follow along. And the first, I'll say like the first 3 prep videos, you can watch them in under 30 minutes. Then the first 3 videos of walking you through the first quarter circle mini quilt project, each video is under 15 minutes, and then there's one that's 18 minutes long. So if you watch them in bite-sized chunks, it's totally doable. You can fit it in, 10, 15 minutes per day, you'll be fine. And not every day either, twice or 3 times a week, and you'll be right on par to follow along. All right, so let me bring my little Juki LB5020. This is the little kind of a travel size. It's not a travel size machine. Let me stop. Compared to the big ones that you set up in a table, this is kind of like a smaller, but it's a great travel machine. It's also great just for beginners, or if you're like me, like I got this machine so I can set it on this table for these demos, okay? And it's a workhorse. It goes through everything. But I don't have a walking foot for it yet. It doesn't come with one. It's not part of the accessories. And I haven't yet got one for it. So we're going to wing it. And we know what's going to happen. The fabric layers are going to move on us. But it's okay, because I want to show you how you can still, even if you have these issues, even if you have an entry-level machine and you don't have a walking foot, you can still tackle these types of quickie scrap busting projects, right? All right, so first and foremost, if we have a look here, all right, you can see I have 2 layers of batting, and then I have my little quilt block on top, and then fabric on the back. Well, I can tell you right now, this is not going to go through smoothly on any machine without a walking foot for the most part, okay? But we're going to try it anyways. Why not? So here are some troubleshooting tips to help you out. When you're going through multiple layers, especially when you've incorporated the thickness of a cotton batting in here, you want to lengthen your stitch length, okay? So that is the first thing I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave my questions up real quick. Okay, so right here, I'm going to, and let me decide where I want to start. Sure, I'll start in the center on this side. Why not? I'm going to try and stay about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch close to the outer edge of my quilt block, okay? And I'm going to lengthen my stitch length really long, because this machine only goes up to 5 millimeters in length. So I'm going to set it to the max mode, because even though you might say your machine goes up in stitch length to 6 millimeters or 7, you might think, wow, that's a super long stitch length. But because of all the added layers, you'll see that when it stitches out, it won't actually be that big. So just set yourself up by lengthening your stitch length, okay? So I'm going to try and help this. I mean, it's not struggling to go through. What I'm trying to do is help the layers go through so I don't get too much of that shifting in between the layers, okay? So I'm going to stop here. I'm stopping with my needle down. I'm going to lift the presser foot up, pivot, turn, and I'm just making sure that none of this fabric is bubbling up on me. Because I did use that spray base, I should be all right for the most part. Let's see. Oh, awesome. Valerie says she got her box yesterday too. I'm so excited. So many of you have joined my quilt club. I'm so excited to see the mini quilts because some people use solid fabric. Some people use like bright colors on the inside and then light colors on the outside. And then I think I saw Margie use like a black fabric for the background piece of the quarter circle. And then she used brighter fabrics for the end. I'm like, oh my gosh, you get so many different fabric and color value combinations just based on different fabric choices. So that's probably my favorite part to see because I'm like looking at your blocks like, wow, how are you like, you never sewn curves before and your blocks are perfect. So I'm super happy to see that. As a teacher, you know, that's the ultimate goal, right? To see your students have successful results. So I'm super excited about that. I'm going to take one more stitch. I'm a little bit far from the edge here. That looks pretty good so far. Y'all, I'm telling you, this machine is a workhorse. There's no walking foot on it. And look at that. All right, so let's keep going. Oh, and I did get some questions, some DMs from y'all asking if we restock these. The Juki LB5020, we have them back in stock, so we just have a few left. I know there were several of you that were on the wait list, so we restocked it. That got emailed out, and there's still a couple left in stock. So if you're wanting one, remember you can always get it from our online shop, craftygemini.com/shop. Okay, coming to this corner, needle down. Always pivot with the needle down. It's holding your spot there. That way you don't have to try and guess if you have the needle out of your project where you need to take the next stitch, okay? Okay, let's see. Oh, I see a question here. Can we use 2 layers of Insulbrite or 1 layer of 100% cotton and 1 layer of Insulbrite? That's perfect. That's absolutely right. I think it depends on the brand, right? You're saying Insulbrite. I can't remember what the trademark, like who the manufacturer of Insulbrite is. Is it Worm & Company? I think. I'm not sure, but make sure that you read the manufacturer's instructions for the one that you're deciding to use because some of them will say, if you're going to use multiple layers, make sure that you put a layer of just 100% cotton in between. So just be mindful of that. And if you've thrown away the packaging, just do a Google search for the company for whatever the brand of the one is that you used and double check to make sure, right? But I think you'd be safe with 1 layer of 100% cotton and the Insulbrite or whatever the thermal product, you know, that thermal batting product. Oh, I'm seriously in shock right now that I'm almost all the way around with no walking foot. This is chunky. I mean, look at this. I try to tell people for 315 bucks, this machine is a beast. And if y'all have been watching my WIP Wednesdays, you've seen me sew from rayon jersey to cotton spandex to quilted bags. We made last week the little thread catcher. We were sewing together a whole 2 layers of a quilted sandwich. Okay, look at this. No puckering. You seriously? Okay, even I was like, we'll see what happens. It'll allow me, you know, to give them some info on troubleshooting. I don't know what to tell you. If you have a machine that can't do this, I mean, keep the walking foot on it. But like, okay, so if you have ever done anything like this before in handbags or in quilting, you know what happens right here, right? Where you started your stitches and when you come back around to finish it, there usually is a bubble here. And that's because the fabric has been getting moved and distorted as you've worked your way around. But look at this. It didn't happen here. I'm literally about to just stitch over this is ridiculous. And so I just stitched over those first couple stitches by a few. And now we'll trim our threads. Oh my word. Look at this. Look how smooth. And I haven't even quilted the inside part of it. So this is something that I wanted to talk about a little. Because we always think, oh, now I have these layers of batting. I have fabric. I have to quilt it. Well, it depends on the batting that you use. So I love to use Quilter's Dream, okay? And this is Quilter's Dream 100% Cotton Natural Select. It's like all these names, right? The natural is the natural color, has not been bleached. And then Select has to do with the loft or the thickness of the batting. So Select is their medium. It's like the regular, okay? And then they have one called Request. And actually, this is Request here. This was left over from another project. And I'm going to hold it up next to this one to see. I think y'all can see the thickness comparatively. Look at this. It's almost sheer, okay? But when I put this here, it's almost like half the thickness okay, of the regular select. So this is request. This is the thinnest version that this batting comes in, but they're all 100% cotton, okay? So where was I going with that? Let me think. I don't know. All right, so that's what I was saying, is the live TV for you. So I was saying you have to check the manufacturer's instructions based on the batting that you're using, because since I like to use Quilter's Dream, I know on the Quilter's Dream package, I believe it says I can quilt within 8 inches. It depends, or some of them say 13. I'm trying to see if I have a package here, but I don't, because I usually buy it in bulk off a roll. But look and see on the package cover of your batting and see what it says, like quilted lines should be, 9 inches apart, 10 inches apart, 13, 12 inches. That measurement there is what determines how far apart your quilting needs to be. So if I measure this, for example, from the basting line here to the basting line here is 11 inches. So say this batting says you can quilt it within 12 inches of itself, like the lines have to be at least 12 inches apart. Then I don't really have to do any more quilting, because there's a stitch line here and a stitch line here. And although this is basting, I'm not going to take these stitches out. They will remain in the finished pot holder. So like, really, you don't even have to quilt anymore if you don't want to, right? The easiest way to go ahead and quilt it, just to help secure everything and anchor down the center, would be, in this block in particular, is to just stitch in the ditch. Just one line. Boop. So let's go ahead and do that. Why not? So we'll do that. Then we'll know for sure that the stitching lines or the quilting lines are plenty enough apart, and I won't have to do any more quilting. So you don't have to think like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this project because I need to do free motion quilting. If you have them free motion quilted, that's great. I'm just staying to the side of this seam in what I call the down side of the seam, right? Whichever side you press the seam to is like the bulkier side, because there's 2 more layers of fabric pressed in that direction. So I'm just quilting in the ditch to the downside of the center seam, and I'm just using gray thread. Okay, so there, we're done. I'm going to trim my threads, and all we got to do is trim it and make and attach our binding, and we'll have a little hot pad there. Okay, so you don't have to quilt anymore if you don't want to, but make sure when you're figuring out whether or not you need to, that you reference what the spacing in between the stitch or quilting lines your batting says. Okay, all right, let's see. Oh, Heather says her daughter loves this machine. She got it for her for Christmas. That's awesome. All right, let's see. Okay. Yeah, thank you all. Heather says, don't forget to like the video. I saw your mini quilt, Heather. Your blocks look amazing. All right, so then let's go ahead and trim this up. And because I basted all around the exterior here, I'm not going to trim further in from that line. I want those stitches to stay there. Otherwise, it would defeat the purpose, right? So what I'm going to do here is, and apologies for the glare, quilting rulers is how it is. We're going to go, I'm just kind of aligning this, so I'm leaving a little bit of background space here. And I like to do it with the bottom left and the side right of a square quilting ruler, because that way I can really cut 2 edges at once. If this one feels a little bit awkward, instead you can do it so that it's this one and this one if you're right-handed, or this one and this one if you're left-handed. So for me, let's go here, so I can cut here and here. And we know that if we follow along the edge of a square quilting ruler, it's going to be square. So that's the aim right here. That looks pretty good. All right, so that's 2. And I'll turn this and do the remaining 2 and see what size we're looking at here. About 11 1/4. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And 11 1/4 across the top. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way and I'll do both at the same time. So 11 1/4. Make sure whatever measurement you decide that you're writing it all the way across the edge. Otherwise, whatever is inside, like you might still end up with corners that are square, but the design or the motif on the inside will be like whoop, a little bit wonky. Make sure 11 1/4, 11 1/4. Okay, let's do it. So this is just a quick way to turn your scraps, your lonely little blocks, that's going to be perfect. You can use up your ugly fabrics, the ones that aren't your favorites from your stash, right? Then I have 2 strips of binding here. 2 fabric strips. I thought I did have 1. Where'd you go? What? Let me scoot some stuff around here so I can find it. And I'll show y'all some other little blocks. So I mentioned earlier, this one that we just did has 2 layers of the cotton batting on the inside. You can see it really good on this side here. Okay, then this one is going to be wool batting, so obviously I need to go in and trim this guy down so I can bind it as well. But I mean, that would make 2 of these little hot pads that are already practically done. If you're a quilter, then you probably already know how to make and attach binding, right? And if you don't, I definitely have tutorials on my YouTube channel. Just type in Crafty Gemini, make and attach quilt binding, and you'll find my videos. Then I also wanted to say, for those of you that are already signed up in my Clammy Quilt Club, if you have blocks, right? In this case, these are 4 blocks, and these were made with the 10-inch Clammy. But if you have blocks that you don't like the way that they were placed together, they don't look really good, right where they're supposed to have seamless joins, or maybe you didn't fall in love with the fabrics after you saw them together, right? This is the perfect size to turn into one of these little quilted hot pads. So don't feel like it's a full waste. You can still turn it into something functional, right? Even if it's for you to use in your own house. But how cute would that be? Right? And I feel like this is a type of project that doesn't have to like match with the decor, right? It's just like a pop of color on the table. Who doesn't love that? So just wanted to give you some other ideas on ways to feel like you didn't just waste all your time. This is a learning experience, right? So even if you're trying out a different quilting technique that didn't turn out perfectly, give it a try and turn it into a little quilted hot pad here. So let me see real quick. I really don't know where it went. That's super weird. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead then and cut a different piece of fabric. Let's scoot this guy out. Because if you see here on my strip, I have selvage and I have selvage. That means that this is the full width of the fabric, and this is going to give you an idea of how long of a strip you'll need to get around, especially if your block is this size. Remember, I trimmed this one down to 11¼ inches square. So look what happens. If I just place this here, here, and around this edge, there's not enough fabric in one strip by the width of the fabric to account for the full binding square that you need. Is that it? There it is. I knew I had it somewhere here. All right, so we need to combine 2 of them. All right, so I'm just going to trim off my selvage edge here real quick. And I've cut these to 2½ inches wide this way. You don't have to use them 2½. You can get away with 2¼ which is what I often do on quilts. But this is just a hot pad, right? If you end up with a thicker batting or a thicker binding to the back side of the project, it's fine. So now we're going to do our backwards L. So you put 1 strip in front of you, pretty side facing up like a capital letter I. And then we're going to take the next one and place it across this way. So it's going pretty side face down and perpendicular to this one. So this is what I call the backwards L right here. Okay. And we're going to place these so they line up. Some people offset them so they can see exactly where the fabrics intersect and they know they need to sew then from here to here. It's just personal preference. I put them right there, and I'm just going to put 1 pin through on this side. You can draw the line, and I'll draw it just to show y'all, but I rarely ever draw the line. I just take it to the sewing machine. So then the next step is to sew from this here to this corner. And you want to finish off where the bottom one finishes. So like at that intersecting point here and here. And we're going to stitch there. So let's grab our Juki. And for this one, let me remember to bring my stitch length down because now we're dealing with a construction seam. We're not in the basting and dealing with that much bulk anymore. So we'll do 2.4 millimeters in length. That's fine. And I'm not following an actual guide here because I need my needle in the center position so I can follow the line that I actually drew. Okay. And so if you were doing this and you were making binding for a big quilt, you would just continue connecting all your strips the same way. That backwards L, diagonal goes from top right to bottom left is the direction that you sew it in. Okay, I'm going to trim away 1/4 of an inch to the right of my stitch line. And then let's press the seam open so I can fold this up. All right. Just like that. Okay, so if you leave that seam open, it just helps reduce the bulk a little bit more right here. I'm just going to give it a little press. If you have a clapper, definitely use it here. That'll help make it lie a whole lot flatter. Okay. And then, now we're going to fold the whole thing in half this way, lengthwise with the pretty side facing out. Just your basic quilt binding at this point. All right. Let's grab this. I'm just going to do that. And again, here for this part, I do like to use my clapper. And this is just a hunk of wood, super smooth, easy on the hand, and we have them in the online shop. I use them for everything, for hems on garments, for quilt blocks, seams, when you're joining those quilt blocks together to create your quilt top. Sometimes there's a lot of bulk in those areas and we want to press the seam open. If you're in my Clammy Quilt Club, you've seen videos on this already where I share with you those tips. All right. And we'll see if anybody has any more questions for me on the new online quilt club. This is a perfect time for you to ask them because I'm here right now. All right. Oh, what size needle? I just have an 80-12 universal in here, which is right amazing. A true sewing? Nope, never heard of it. The question was, do I know what a true sewing machine is? I've never heard of that. So my answer would be nope. All right. Oh, Heather, you're sweet. She says, I'm a teacher, and I really appreciate your good teaching. Thank you so much. That always means so much to me coming from a teacher or from struggling students who maybe their whole life have thought that they could never sew. I get so many stories from some of you out there saying you failed home ec in 1968 or 1975, and so you always thought that you were never going to be able to sew. And then you found my tutorials and now you're sewing. I love to hear those kinds of stories. The only part that makes me a little sad is like, it took so many years, right? But it's that kind of thing that when you're a kid, the adults around you and the teachers around you, whatever they say to you, right? We take it to heart and we listen to it. So that can affect us sometimes. But I love to hear that people, you know, appreciate my teaching style and that it resonates with so many of you that you're able to like get it, you know? All right. So I just trimmed off salvage. Let's get rid of this. And then I'm just going to bind my little hot pad like I would any other mini quilt. And I have actually step-by-step video tutorials on my YouTube channel on how to make a mini quilt. I walk you through all this and I show you exactly how to bind it as well. All right, so I guess it doesn't matter how it's going to be this way or this way because it's not actually going up on the wall. It's not a true mini quilt. This is just going to be thrown on the table for hot pads and plates. So, or hot pots and plates, I should say. So I'm just going to pick some place to start, and I think I'm going to start off on a smooth side. Clearly, I trimmed a little bit off of the stitching here. So maybe I'll start on this side because I know it's already secured and down. So then I like to like extend my binding by about 6 inches or so over the point where I'm going to start attaching the binding to my my mini quilt or hot pad or whatever. So I extend it past and I'm going to start here and then I'm going to start pivoting around the corners and I'll work my way around. All right. I want to know if you're in the Clammy Quilt Club. Let us know in the chat box below, and if you have any leftover blocks that you've been playing around with, if you're going to try this out. Let's see. I Am Paper Princess says, what are the fabric requirements for the Clammy Quilt Club? I joined, I didn't see it anywhere. Can I just use fat quarters? I have a ton of them. So you can. Now the directions for each, well, because we're dripping each of the mini quilt patterns out every Monday. So you'll see when you click on the first one for the quarter circle block or mini quilt or block or whatever, the directions are there, like what size you need to cut out your pieces, and they're so minimal. things are like 5.5-inch squares, 6-inch squares. They're super little. So fat quarters is actually the perfect stash to pull from if you're going to be making the mini quilts. Okay, so yes, fat quarters would absolutely work. Belge Cats is asking, how wide is your strip for the binding? So I cut these to 2.5 inches wide, but I mentioned you can do 2.25. You can probably even do 2. It depends. I say 2, but then it's like if you sew a super chunky 1/4 inch seam, you might not have enough to get around to the other side. And this is definitely something that I would not bother to hand sew the binding to the back. I probably would just hit it with a zigzag or another straight stitch around the top because it's going to get washed, I'm sure, a lot. And I ain't spending hand sewing time on a hot pad. Let's be real. Okay. All right, great. Some of you are saying, I'm in the Clammy Quilt Club. I'm going to try this one. Awesome. Oh, Mudcat1256 says, I'm in the club. I'm waiting for the ruler. It has shipped already. Great. So yeah, if you order from us and you see that your order is still processing, it's probably because the physical aspect of your order hasn't yet been completed. So we always like our system automatically will send you a notification with the tracking info. So once you get that, you know your package has shipped, okay? All right, so I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance now, so that means I need to scoop my needle over because this doesn't have it automatic, right? Oops, that's the stitch length. And this is actually a great point to stop right here and mention. Although I'm connecting this to here, right, and I would be thinking along the lines of construction seam, which typically for me that's between 2 millimeters to 2.5 millimeters in length. Because it's actually construction seam, meaning attaching two things that we want to stay together, but we have the entire quilt sandwich, which has 2 layers of quilt batting, we're still going to have to lengthen the stitch length, okay? So don't think that you'll be able to get away with a super short stitch. On some machines, fine, and especially if you have a walking foot on the machine, you may be able to do that. But I don't have a walking foot here, so we're going to lengthen the stitch length. I have it set right now to 2.8. We'll see. And you'll know, because if the machine is kind of like you're sewing and it's just staying in the exact same spot, you know it's not, the stitch length is not long enough to allow the feed dogs to pull something through. And so if that happens to you, just lengthen it a touch more. I need to move the width over, which is the needle position. So that's what I need to do. There. Let me go there. Okay. So I'm going to backstitch a few because I'm going to be yanking on this when I work my way around to the other edge. And this is just how I like to do my quilt bindings. I stop a 1/4 inch away from the edge. I stop with the needle down. I lift the presser foot. I turn, I pivot, and then I stitch off the edge. Okay, that's just my technique. That's how I like to do it. And if you've never seen that before, if you watch any of my tutorials on this that I have on my YouTube channel, you'll see it. You can just do a search for Crafty Gemini quilt binding and all my quilt binding tutorials will pop up for you. Then here, I'm going to flip up to create a 45-degree angle here. And then I'm going to bring it down so that this fold is flush with the top. And then we're going to start here on the end. And I like to backstitch there. This is insane to me that I'm going through all these layers and attaching binding with no walking foot on this machine. I'm telling y'all. And then I'm just double checking to make sure that I'm catching all these basting stitches because I don't want basting stitches to be to this side of the binding. All right. Next corner. I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch away. That looks good. Turn, stitch off. And of course, this I'm doing it without even thinking about it because I've done this like hundreds of times. over a decade, right? So, and this is all stuff. You know, a lot of people in the new Clammy Quilt Club, remember I said the sale price is valid until Friday, and then after that, we're just closing it up altogether. Now, some people think we're only going to be covering curves and making the mini quilt tops. Well, I'm going to be including 5 extra bonus videos where I'm going to share with you different finishing techniques and things that you can do with those mini quilts, and then also showing you, there's a bonus video on free motion quilting designs on a long arm machine and free motion quilting designs and ideas, you know, just for inspiration. So once you have your mini quilts completed, you can look and watch those videos to get ideas on, you know, what should I try and do? Straight lines, hash lines, free motion type of designs on them. And so I'll share with you some tips for both free motion quilting on a regular sewing machine and then also on the long arm. And then I'm going to share with you how to make and attach the quilt binding and finish off your whole mini quilt all the way up to how to hang it on your wall. So all of that is included. It's like a full process course bundle, okay? So if you have questions on that, you can definitely just ask away. And that way, if you see any questions that I'm missing out on, just let me know. Awesome. Oh my gosh, I see Carla says she's in the club. Let's see. Susanna's asking, is it regular mail or FedEx? It depends on what you're ordering. Most of it is either USPS or UPS. All right. Okay. So, Jean Marie is asking, what comes in the Quilt Club package? So I'm not sure if you're asking about the box or you're just asking about the Quilt Club itself as a package, right? So if you're asking about the Quilt Club, you're getting 25 different video lessons, step-by-step instructions on 5 different blocks and 5 mini quilts using the Clammy ruler. Okay, that's what all those lessons are on. All the prep stuff, supplies overview, and then we go into every single one of the 5 different shapes. And I share with you all the tips. I share with you 3, and now in the next course that goes up next Monday, you're getting 4 techniques that I want you to try for sewing curves so you can figure out which one works best for you. So we use pins, no pins, glue basting. I have a secondary technique using no pins. And then, you know, I show you kind of like a hybrid between no pins and a bunch of pins, which is just 1 pin. So I show you a bunch of different ways to do it and try it out so you can figure out, based on your body, right, your motor skills, what makes sense and what works best for you. And then you get some printables. You got coloring pages for every single one of the designs in the quilt so that you can play around with your future quilt designs. You know, if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to work with solids, I want to sketch in and color in a sample coloring page to see exactly what it would look like done. We have all those coloring pages there for every single one of the 5 shapes that we're going to be tackling in the club projects, okay? All right, so let me do this. I'm coming around this last corner here. And then we're going to finish off this side. So I'm just going to stitch a little bit down and stop just shy here because I like to leave myself several inches to work these 2 ends together. Does everybody do their quilt binding like this? I wonder. Let me know in the chat box if you do your binding just like this or not. All right, let's see. So Karen's saying she's joining in late. What's the quilt group? This is my new online club that we opened last Friday, and it closes this Friday. So you still have a couple more days to get in, and it's all about sewing curves. So this half circle block that you see in here is part of that program. There's 5 different shapes that we work on with the Clammy ruler. So it's 7 weeks worth of content, and then you keep access to it, so unlimited after that. And we're tackling 5 different projects. So I'm going to trim this down. That's like the scariest part for everybody. It's like, no, don't cut into the binding strip. I was about to say I know what I'm doing, but let me just double check and make sure I didn't cut into it mistakenly. So now I just overlapped them by whatever the width of the strip was. So remember I said I cut it to 2.5. So I'm going to overlap them. This one stops there. And this one, I want it from where that one ends to here be at 2.5. And that's it. Then I'm going to carefully go like this and open this one and just line it up like I would if the strips were loose and open, the backwards L. So this one here, and of course this always happens to me where I should have left more room, but I'm so impatient that I almost want to stitch everything together. No big deal. So leave yourself more room on the side of your quilt. This always happens to me. I don't know why, like I never learned my lesson. I'm going to put a pin here because I just want these corners to stay still for me while I eyeball the diagonal. And that's how I do it. We're just going to eyeball it and wing it. So next is needle position needs to be in the center. Great. Okay. So now I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to set the needle in the down position first. Okay, now I'm going to open this up and work with it on a diagonal. Leave yourself more room than I did, y'all. But it's no big deal. Okay. I kind of like to do stuff like this too, where it's like a little bit wilder, not as organized, because I still like to show you that even when you make a little mistake here, a little mistake there, it all works out. All right, so now we need to trim away the excess 1/4 inch away. The same thing we did before, we're gonna open that seam, right? And so for here, chances are you probably won't be able to get like the tip of your iron in there to just really, really press it, but you can always finger press it. So I'm just scratching that seam allowance open, okay, with my fingernail. And that will be plenty. And then, ta-da, when you flip it, it just folds right onto itself into perfect position, so I can just go back to the sewing machine and stitch it down. So see, even when you wing things, if you make a little move here or there, if it's, you know, not exactly perfect, it all works out, y'all. Okay, let's backstitch to secure, and I'm just making sure everything is down where I want it. So now we finish stitching this down. All right, and that's it, really. After that, then you would decide, you know, if you're in the mood for doing the whole hand stitching to the back side of your little quilt here, you could do that. If I usually will press it anyways, and then probably just take it to the sewing machine again and stitch it to the back side. But look at that. It's a little mini quilt. It's a great practice piece for you to work on making and attaching quilt binding for bigger quilts. If you don't have a lot of time to make an entire quilt, sometimes we need like a little instant gratification project. This would be it. It literally is a little quilt, y'all. So for those of you that are already in the Clammy Quilt Club, welcome. Make sure that you download the calendar for the club. We uploaded these super cute 2 pages with all the information, the dates of the recordings when they go up. And then also the live sessions, the 7 live sessions that we're going to be doing, some info on giveaways that we're going to be having at the end of our 7-week session. And we made them super cute and printable so that you can jot in the weekdays, you know, which day you're going to be working on the course lessons at home, right behind the scenes. And then I also uploaded a Google Drive document where I want you to submit your question. So if you're working on your projects during the week, okay, and you come across a question or you see that you're having an issue and you're wondering why the shape of the fabric doesn't look like it's supposed to or something like that, enter the question in the Google Drive, and that way I'm going to make sure that I answer all those questions live on Sunday, which is our first scheduled live chat. So those of you that are still thinking about joining, check it out. If you want to learn how to tackle curves, maybe you're looking for a new challenge this year, sewing curves is super fun. I've already posted on Facebook a bunch of different mini quilts that people have already been making. One lady said, I never thought I would sew curves, and here it is. And her little mini quilt was like perfect. So I love, love, love to see that. Ooh, this actually looks pretty funky. I like it. All right, so there it is. I would just turn this over. You can also glue base this here, or obviously you can just put the little plastic clips, right? These guys, as you run it through the sewing machine and then stitch this down, making sure that you give yourself the mitered corners on each of the 4 corners. So I would just turn this under and then fold that over top so I get that 45-degree angle miter and just stitch all the way around. Okay, so let me pop in here, see if I have any little last questions. You can show them my face now. And all right. Oh, PJ says, I'm intimidated by the binding process, but you make it look so easy. Don't be intimidated. And actually, this, again, is a perfect little project for that. Tackle one of the little mini quilt projects, make it into a little pot holder or trivet or whatever hot pad. And that way, the expectation of it needing to be like a super perfectly crisp binding just isn't there, right? This is like, it's going to be under a pot. And the more you practice, the better you will get, okay? Definitely. All right, Jerry says, I've done binding on a bag, but never actually finished the quilt. I'm a confident beginner with this. Wow, if you've done binding on a bag, I'm going to be straight up with you. That's harder than binding a quilt because this is flat. Usually when you're doing binding on a bag, you're like on the inside seams, around some curves, exterior seams that are in different shapes and switch directions. On a quilt, it's literally just like boom, boom, boom. You have 4 sides, you miter the corners, and it's super easy. So yes, I would even venture out to say if you've done binding on a bag, you're probably more intermediate than you think, than a confident beginner, okay? All right, let's see. Oh, Jan says she's making scrunchies from my video right now. They're so easy. I'm loving that. I actually was, I found one the other day that's like a bright coral colored for my daughter's hair, and I was like, oh, I forgot how fun scrunchies are. They're super cute. And again, scrap busters for sure. All right. Let's see. Miss Bernadine says, I do my binding like you, but I heard of a technique called facing the quilt. Have you ever done that? So I have. It's kind of like adding 4 standalone borders almost, where you sew it to the front of the quilt, but you flip it to the back, but there's no actual like ridged up binding like this. I may do a lesson or something on that in the future. But yeah, I kind of feel like I've been hearing more and more people talking about it recently. All right, let's see what else. All right. Let's see. Okay, good. So it looks like I answered that. Sheila says you can also make mug rugs with leftover fabric. Absolutely. This could be a mug rug. I mean, if you think about it, look at the little half circle block. It's literally a rectangle, like just like the length of the mug rugs that we're used to making, right? Play around with some free motion quilting right here. That would be super fun. Can you do yeah, perfect. I was going to say a picture-in-picture with this one, but I was saying this is a half circle block. So if we were to do a mug rug, a lot of the mug rugs are like this, right? Like a little rectangle. And if you don't know what a mug rug is, it's like a combo between a coaster and a placemat. So it's like just a small little placemat for you to have like next to your desk. So you can put like a mug or a drink and then like a little snack, a cookie, a Danish or something. So they were really popular years ago. We used to do a lot of mug rug swaps. Do y'all remember those? We used to swap mug rugs, make themed ones. But I'm saying this half circle block is literally the size and shape of a mug rug. So this would be super cute to use for that. And I was going to say, if you do like free motion quilting in here, how fun would that be? Like you don't even have to do much out here. Just do something fun, even with a busy fabric right here. And that would be a perfect little project to give as a gift or to keep for yourself. Okay? So we are going to call it a day there. Just wanted to give y'all another heads up that Friday is the last day to sign up for the Clammy Quilt Club. If you want to learn how to sew patchwork pieces that have curves in them, right? We're using the Clammy ruler. So anything with a curve in it, and actually I'll just show y'all real quick the different shapes because I feel like we have some new people on. So we're going to be tackling the orange peel. Okay, these are 4 little orange peel blocks together. Let me grab these guys. This is a pillow that features the orange peel block. Okay, so we're going to be making a mini quilt with these, and we'll go over the techniques and everything, how to cut it, how to piece it, how to trim it, how to make the mini quilts with it. My little mini quilts are, oh, I put them down here, duh. This is the clamshell block. Okay, so I should say clamshell mini quilt that's partially done. The clamshell one has different pieces. So like this corner piece is different from the clamshell piece, is different from the middle piece, is different from the right end piece. Okay, so a lot of different shapes. This is the 5th one. So out of the 5 projects that we tackle throughout the 7 weeks of course content, we build up. So we start off with a quarter circle, then half circle, then a full circle that's pieced into the background piece. It's amazing. It's one of my favorites. And then the orange peel, and then finally the clamshell. So you work your way up in complexity of the project. So real quick, some minis just to show you some of the projects we're working on. This is the quarter circle. If you join today, these lessons are already up. You have basically 6 videos that you can watch tonight if you sign up now, so that you can make sure you have everything you need. This is that same one, slightly different background, and we talk a little bit about that in the course on deciding whether or not you want to leave more background around the little quarter circle pieces or not. This is one of my favorites. These are circles, look at that, pieced into the background piece. Okay, I love it. It looks appliqué, but it is most definitely not. These are pieced. And so if you ever thought that maybe you couldn't tackle this, I would say if you're a confident beginner, okay, if you've made a quilt before, if you've made multiple quilt tops before, you absolutely have the skill level to tackle this with my video lessons, okay? I go through everything step by step. Look at this one that I made using half circles. How cute is that? I'm like obsessed with this one. So cute. And they're all half circles. So half and half, but then when you put them together to make a full circle, they also match the size of the block next to it. So there's like infinite possibilities as far as the design layout goes. Of course, a little pop of lime green, why not? So we said quarter circle, half circle, full circle, orange peel, and clamshell. So those are the 5 shapes, and you're going to be making 5 different mini quilts with my step-by-step video lessons, okay? And yeah, the price, or the sale price right now is $97, and then on Friday night at midnight, we're closing the doors, so nobody will be able to join. So if you're still on the fence, you got 2 more days to decide. And then we will be back on Friday for a Flash Sale Friday, and it'll be the last night that we're talking about the Clammy Quilt Club because after that night, you know, everything is going to close. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Oh, Tamara says, anyone questioning themselves that they can't do curves, you can with this Clammy Club. So many different techniques and blocks. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're in, Tamara. All right. Oh, Sarah says she loves seeing the chickens roost. City girl, she says she didn't know they did that. Yes, they do. They roost on the pecan trees out back, y'all. So those are chickens that you see back there. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. We will be back on Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And again, if you enjoyed tonight's demo, give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Bye, everybody.